The turmoil in Britain's Conservative Party is happening against this backdrop of new divisions inside America's conservative movement and its ongoing embrace of former President Trump. Take Pennsylvania alone. After the Trump-backed candidate there, Doug Mastriano, won the state's Republican nomination for governor, at least 9 former and current GOP state officials have just publicly endorsed his Democratic rival. It comes amid growing fears among the Republican establishment that Mastriano is simply too extreme to win Pennsylvania's governor's race in the fall. He's a fierce supporter of Trump's 2020 election conspiracy theories. He was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee for his role helping to organize demonstrations that day. Then take what's going on in Arizona. The current Republican governor there, Doug Ducey, who is also the head of the National Republican Governors Association and has been a target of former President Trump's ire, he's just broken with Mr. Trump, choosing not to endorse the candidate that Trump has picked to succeed Ducey as governor. Then nationally, the Senate's top Republican Mitch McConnell is trying to steer his party away from Trump-style embraces of those hot-button cultural issues tied to guns and abortion. As party leaders grow concerned that it could hurt them with the suburban voters they need to win back Congress in the upcoming midterms. Those concerns seem like they were on full display last night in battleground Michigan, the Republican gubernatorial primary debate there, as the 4 leading contenders all professed loyalty to former President Trump. Hours later, one of the candidates on that very debate stage, Ryan Kelly, was arraigned, it happened this morning, in court on federal charges tied to his participation in the January 6th insurrection. Kelly pleaded not guilty. I'm joined now by Republican Congressman from Michigan, Fred Upton. Congressman, we appreciate making time to be with us. I want to talk about your recent trip to Israel in a moment. You were there as their government was collapsing. But first, let me ask your sense of what's going on with your party. What do you make of Republicans going so far as to endorse a Democrat in Pennsylvania's governor's race?
Well, that was news to me when you just reported it, Peter. But here in Michigan, you know, the margin of victory for Biden was 154,000 votes. A state Republican, state Senate Republican. We have 5 Republican candidates, 4 of which agreed that the election had been stolen. So it doesn't meet what even the state Senate committee investigated and concluded when they were done a number of months ago.
So, Governor, obviously we're having a little teeny problem with your signal, but we want to keep trying to have this conversation. I want to ask you about this gubernatorial race in your state, because we lost part of what you said. The Trump influence there is still pretty strong. All 4 of the Republican candidates said they were loyal to him last night. I want to play some of that sound and get your reaction to it. Let's hear that.
President Trump is still my president.
We have this focus on January 6th, where there were peaceful protesters and then some who disrupted the process.
My support for President Trump then was strong, and Donald Trump has done amazing things for our country. He has inspired so many people with what our republic truly stands for, and that's a great thing for our nation.
I would take mean tweets today for a safer America. I would take jobs today versus what we have.
Congressman, I think I just briefly appointed you as governor there, which I assume you have no interest in joining that race right now. But I want your reaction to that messaging that we're hearing from Republicans on the ground there. And if you worry that sort of sticking so close to former President Trump ultimately just cedes the race to Gretchen Whitmer.
So here's the deal. The primary in Michigan is August 2nd. It is a very close race between 5 different candidates. Originally, there were 10, and the Secretary of State's office ruled 5 of them off the ballot. So with these 5, 4 of them debated last night. And frankly, whoever gets Trump's endorsement, like we saw in Pennsylvania, like we saw in the Senate race in Ohio and a number of other states, whoever gets Trump's endorsement for the gubernatorial nod on the Republican side is probably going to be the nominee come August 2nd, once the ballots are cast. So that's what the debate is right now. Who can best attract his support to win the primary? And then we'll see if they move more to the middle against Gretchen Whitmer, who is, of course, the current Democratic governor and not challenged in a primary.
So let me ask you, if I can, sir, about your situation. You faced, as you know well, swift and fierce condemnation after your vote following January 6th to impeach the former president, President Trump, right now. So after listening to the committee's January 6th hearings, do you feel vindicated in some way? Are you hearing from some of your soon-to-be former colleagues in different language that you may have at the time?
Well, I do. You know, the biggest thing that I regret right now is there were 10 of us, 10 Republicans, that voted to impeach the president based on his behavior and what we saw firsthand happened. What disappoints me the most is that here we are a year and a half later. We're now just getting other Republicans within the former administration to step up to tell what they thought, what they saw happened. And where were they a year and a half ago when 10 of us voted our conscience and decided to cast the vote that we did? They should have helped us, in my view, back in January when we cast that vote.
But, sir, what does it say to you? You may be vindicated in some form, but soon to be out of a job, at least in Congress.
Well, none of the 10 of us regretted our vote that we cast following on that impeachment vote following the January 6th event. For me, I chose not to run. Our district, Michigan, lost a congressional seat. Our district was chopped up into a sandwich a couple different ways and made it really impossible for me to run, even though I love campaigning. Same thing happened to Adam Kinzinger. His district was cut up. We've got a number of primaries still to come. But at the end of the day, none of us would have changed our vote that we cast back in, I guess it was January of last year.
I want to ask you about Israel in 1 second. One last question, though, about the strategy of Republicans now. There's a sense, Mitch McConnell has said, according to NBC News is reporting, that they'd like to try to diffuse the sort of focus on some of these cultural issues like guns and abortion. How much of a risk is that for for Republicans come this fall?
Well, you know, we passed some major gun legislation that the president signed just a few days ago. It was bipartisan in the House, not overwhelmingly bipartisan. I was one that supported it, but it passed with nearly 70 votes in the Senate. We don't have a lot of legislative days left between now and the election. I think.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Your in the balance of this legislative year. So in large part, this will be messaging in terms of where we are, getting ready for the next Congress to step in January.
Congressman, we see you. Your lips aren't moving, but your words are coming through. So I'm going to ask my last question. Hope the shot comes back. It's simply about Israel. You were there very recently. Right now, they're about to have their, 5th election in 3 years. I'm going to be traveling with the president there next week. What is it going to take for that country to have a stable government?
Well, of course, they're going to have their elections on November 1st. I was there last week with a number of other colleagues. It was a bipartisan trip. We met the same day with the current prime minister, the former prime minister, and then the caretaker prime minister, who will be on the ballot, I suspect, or within the coalition when they have that vote November 1st. I'm actually excited about the president's trip to the Middle East. I think there is an opportunity here where we might be able to see the beginning of a lasting peace with some other nations within the region that may have a very happy conclusion at the end of the day. So I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, and we'll see what happens.
And they thought our politics was complicated. Congressman Fred Upton from Michigan, we appreciate your making time despite some technical challenges to speak to us today. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.